Hello and welcome. We are standing into a project where we've done the scheduling, we planned, we have assigned resources, we double checked, we have now margins, and we even did the baseline of the project. And we got the go. And we are now leading this project, and we entered the interesting part. The project is really running. What we are going to look into this module, it's how do we track and how do we control a project. And that's the heart of the work of a project manager. You might be an occasional manager, you might be somebody where the boss just told you need to follow up on this project, or you are an expert, or you are an experienced project manager. Anyway, I'm Christian from Vision 6D. I work as a project manager. I do a lot of IT infrastructure, security, networking, and I'm doing IT projects. But I'm also doing projects in the mechanical fields, in electronic fields, in a lot of industrial fields, as well as construction sector. So I'm trying to share with you my experience on project management and specifically with Microsoft Project. That tool is interesting. I have many videos on the subject and people really appreciate them. So without further extending, let's jump into Microsoft Project. So what we will do together, it's that we are now into a project where we've done already the last step before tracking, which is the baseline. The baseline of the project. So we have a project that is baseline. That project is a project for the implementation in a company of a new CRM system, customer relation management system. That kind of systems, they help from marketing through sales up to after support to follow all the needs of a customer. In our project, we have 3 subsidiaries, which are Marseille, Lyon, and Toulouse. In all, it's about 50 people, and we are now at the stage where it is implemented, but the people, they need to get trained. So we define the training for those people as a project. We are going to train 50 people at a single location. For this, we will use consultants during 1 week at that location. All the people will come there, travel there, have lodging, food and everything. And our project has to determine the costs of those activities, and we will have also to schedule it. So all this was done. And now we are going to follow on this project. And this project also, once the training is done, the consultants, they will go to the 3 locations to do a follow-up to help people really start their work on the new software. So I welcome you to this session. For me, it's a pleasure to see that you are following. I'm Christian from Vision 6D. And you can follow many trainings that I'm providing free on internet, specifically the topic MS Project, and the channel is the one from Vision 6D. I do also propose trainings one-on-one in the case that you want to learn MS Project deeper or that you want a faster track to learn it. This is done through sessions, and you can contact me and we can arrange a session with you. What we see right now here around me are the reports part of MS Project. I took this as an illustration And you will understand that what is important with MS Project is that we have ready reports, and they are really going to help us into tracking and controlling a project. What is important to get, it's an overview now of where are those different reports, what they are showing, and what's the influence of the information we are going to use to do the tracking of this project. I give you an example. The project that you see currently behind me is what is called Work Overview. And you see that we have a first graph where you have in orange the cumulative work, and in gray what in agile projects we call the burn down. It's the rate or the graph which shows at which speed the work is done into the project. So this is actually in gray because it's how we've defined it in our project, and it's in fact the baseline, how we expect this project's work to evolve, the speed at which we are going to reduce the work into this project and do the things. And you see below also, we have here a first graph also, where we see 4 characteristic phases of a project. Here we are working with a predictive project, so that is to say that we planned everything and we try to stick to the plan. You see the phases of initiation, planning, execution, and closing. And you see the quantity of work that we have in each of those phases. You see that initiation is when we do the planning of the project, we do the budget, we define what we are going to do into the project, is followed by the planning itself, which is quite important. In such a project, we need to plan a lot. And after that, we have what we call execution, where it's really the heart of what we do in a project. And there is a little thing at the end, is what we call the closing. As you see here, everything is actually in orange because it's the remaining work. You see in blue, we could have what we call actual work. Of course, that for the moment, we haven't done anything in this project, so there isn't any blue color into the project. I'm going a bit down into this to see if I can show you something more. Yes, you see here down a bit. Yes, we see a graph where we see the quantity of work that each human resource is supposed to provide into the project. I'm going now to change a bit the way you see me, like that if I'm a bit smaller, it's easier for you to see. So you see better now also that kind of graph that we have here. This shows the availability of some resources into the project. So in case that you need more resources, it's something that is really convenient to go and to look and to know who can I use for those remaining tasks. So with that, this was a first overview of what you can see. What is important for you at that point, it's to understand that we can follow the work and we don't have any actual value into this. I will now go and take the project itself in the view you are used to see it, and we have here the table with the information of the different tasks we have to do. We have the duration which has been estimated, and we have the start and finish dates. We have already planned all the aspects, scheduled the tasks, and for this we see that we have defined predecessors of the tasks, the links between the tasks or the dependencies between the tasks. That's how you can see here in the graph on top of my head where will happen what. You can also see here in that column we have defined resources into this project. So I will give you a complete overview of the project. For that, I'm going into the column view and I'm choosing the entire project. So you see we have here the entire project. I will disappear for a moment, but I'm still here. It's to let you appreciate that this project, you see, we've requested the critical path. To do that, I came here down into show bar styles. Now I've removed the critical path and here I'm asking the critical path back. The critical path is showing us where our tasks, if delayed, all our project would be delayed. So I encourage you, if you don't know what is the critical path, to follow the modules that I've done on the critical path. You can also see the module, the previous module that is on the baselining the project. And there you have many explanations about the critical path and margins. So we are now at the stage where this project is now moving ahead. So well, what you see, it's that the Gantt chart, we have gray lines and blue lines. So blue lines are what we do and gray lines are what we are supposed to do. This means that if now I do enlarge a bit, and reposition myself at the beginning here of the project, we will constantly compare in a project what is really happening in the project with what we are supposed to do. That's why to have a baseline is really important, because this is to what you are going to compare your actual situation, meaning, for example, how are my costs? How is the work done? How are we advancing? Always those answers, you will find them because we will, in a way, or MS project is going in a way to compare the gray line with the blue lines. So, to understand this, you must also understand the table you are currently looking at here. This is what we call the entry table. That table here we see is the one by default that comes with MS Project, and I think you are used to that table. Now, when we are entering into the tracking, there are other tables that will interest us. You see that you can go onto table here and you can, for example, select a table for schedule. So I'm going into the table for scheduling and you find again the task names, start and finish dates. You see that we don't have anymore the duration here and we have columns which are late start, late finish. What does it mean? It means that if we want this project to be on track, this date is telling us when at the latest we can start this task. And this column here, the late finish, is telling us when do I have to be finished with the task at the latest. And after that we have the free slack, and this is a margin that we have for each different task here in the project. So these are information that we find in the schedule table. Now I'm going into the tracking table. You see that the tracking table, it's once again something different. You see that here in the beginning, we have what we call actual start. So it means that actually we haven't done anything in this project. So for the moment, all this is written as non-applicable, NA. The other columns you see here, percent completed. We could here come and say that, for example, task number 2, define a project, is already accomplished at 50%. And I could simply come here and key in 50%. You see, this is one way to do the tracking. I'm not going to use that way for the moment, so I'm removing this, but you have now a first feeling of how you can use that tracking table. There is a column here entitled Physical Complete. This is something that we are not going to use, but there are some kinds of projects that where there is a difference between physical complete and percent complete. Because, for example, you are building a wall and you've spent 80% of the time, but you've just have done 50% of the physical work. You spent 80% of the time, but you've done only 50% of the wall, because there were things in the beginning that you had to do that take more time, but you will come up faster at the end. So this is to understand the difference between physical percentage complete and percent complete in terms of time. And you have after, of course, the actual duration, the remaining duration. You have the actual cost and the actual work. So this is really the table that you can use to do the tracking of your project. I will now go and look at another table. If I take here the table of work, so you see that here inside we find other lines which are the baseline. There is information for the baseline because we baselined this project. In the preceding module, you can get all the information you need in order to be able to understand how to do the baseline. And then we have variances here. If anything changed compared to the baseline, it would be reported into this table. And here we have the actual values. And since we haven't started anything, you see that those values are all set to 0. I will now go to another table, still here down, the summary table that you have also an ID. It's similar to the entry table, apart that we see here the percentage accomplished into the project, and we have the cost and the work. So this is also really a table that you can use to present the status of your project. So with that, at that moment, I'm going back to the entry table, the one we know the most often into MS Project. And here I'm going to say that the first task that is here, define a project, that task has been accomplished. So for this, I'm going simply into tasks, and I'm coming here on the top of those lines. You see that I have a button where I can say it has been done 100%. So I'm going to click on that, and you see that first of all we have the checkbox that says okay, this is done, checked. And here we see a darker blue line that has come in. this shows that this task has completely been done. If this task, for example, would have done or would have been accomplished only to 50%, I could come here and say 50%. So you see that the checkbox mark has been removed, and here you see that the darker blue line is only coming to the half of the length of those bars. And in this situation we have the clear blue that shows that it is an automatic mode task, and the darker one shows the progress that is about 50%. So I will change this back to the 100% that it was performed as we did it before. So this thing went okay as it is done, and I'm going to say that the next part here, write the charter, was also accomplished. So I will show it in a different way. You see that I have opened here the information of one task, and there is here inside something that I can use. For example, you could say, if you want to say, oh, it's done, it's not exactly 50%, I'm going to put 45%. Okay, so you could say this, and here you see that we have a bar coming in here. I'm going to enlarge those things that you can see them much better. You see that we have the appreciation here that says 45% accomplished, and here on top of the bar we see it in darker blue at 45%. So what I want to show with inputting information from the task information, you can be more refined, you have a better granularity on what you want to do. So nevertheless, I'm going to say that anyway this is done at 100%. But before to move that far, I'm just going to come back and to say 0%, because there is one thing I would like you to see. There is just one task we've done. It's define the project, and we would like to know how this is evolving into the charts, the reports. So let's go to some of the first reports we used, and the first one I used was the work report. So what I want you to be aware is here the graph. When we gave a look to that graph previously, remember that we didn't have anything in blue. Everything was here in orange because we hadn't started the project. Now we have just one task that has been done. You see that we start here to have the first task in blue. I'm going to give a look at some other report. For example, I'm taking here the cost report. And first of all, you see the total amount of the project. You see now that it's no more equal. There is a difference. So it means that we are spending money now in the project, and we accomplish already 4% of that project. I don't know if you see really well here down. Here among the cost, we see also that there is a little part in blue here. It's the remaining here, it's the opposite, and the actual cost is in this graph in orange. So this was for the costs. Now, I'm going to look at the critical tasks. There are some critical tasks, but I won't enter into this report. I'm going now to have resource overview. And here it's interesting, we have just one task where we've done something, and we have here the resource status for the resources. You see in orange, it's the work that each resource, for example, here the PM, the project manager, has to provide in the project. The stakeholders, you see that they are done with what they had to do. And here the consultants, of course, they have a lot of work to do. So this is how we can understand and how the first information we entered has already an impact on the graphs. And those graphs, you can really use them to give information to the steering committee, to the board, to the customer, all people that are directly or indirectly involved into the project. So now what I'm going to do is to go back to the task here and advance a bit into the project. There is one important point. It's about the dates. When are we into this project and where are we? I'm coming here, we look at the entire project. What I'm doing is keying in information about the tracking of the project and completion. So there is an important point into project, which is the status date. You see here we have a status date that is set to the 30th of March. This project, if I go here into information of the project, it starts at the end of February, and we have placed ourselves 1 month after the start of the project at the 30th of March. I want you also to be aware of the statistics about a project. I'm just going back that you can see how I got to that point. You see here we have the project information, and down there is a small button entitled Statistics. And when you go into there, you really get information. You see, for example, here you have start and finish. What is interesting to see is that you have always the comparison between the current situation and what was defined in the baseline. And down, you see also if there are variances. For example, was our project delayed compared to the baseline? This would appear here if we have a start that was later than what we had initially planned into the baseline. Down, we have also, for the same things, the duration, the work, and the costs. And you can see that the duration are 122 days, the number of hours it's 550, and the cost it's 131,200. And you see that the baseline has the same things, and actually here down you see that we have already spent, we've already worked, and the duration we've already spent 5.3 days on this project, and the remaining is here down. So these are important information that you need to refer to quite often, and with this it's an easy way to find them. So I'm going now to advance and to say here that to write the charter is an activity that took us 2 days, and I'm going to say, as I said earlier, that it is done. For that, I come here and I say simply 100% of it was done. I'm coming here to show you the details of what has happened, and we see the 2 first tasks here are 100%. Let's give a quick look at some of the reports. For example, the work overview. We see that initiation is accomplished. We start to have some work that is done into this project. let's go now back to some of the tasks here. I'm going into the Gantt chart again, view to see the complete project here. And we are going now to also say here that, of course, in this project, we've decided to move ahead. So this also, I'm going to say that it has been performed 100%. Like that, we see that the line initiation here, which is a summary task, has also now been ticked, and we have here 100% of this phase that has been done. I'm moving with you to the next phase, and the next phase is determine the scope. Determine the scope, it's where we really spend time in defining exactly what we want into this training project. And for this, I must admit that we had scheduled 5 days, but we spent way more time on this. And I think we've all had agreed that it's important to well define what we are going to do. So this took us, I'm going to put in 9 days. During that time, I remind you that questions are welcome. If you want a fast track to Learn MS Project, you can always have sessions directly with me. So you see here that determine the scope has been extended, is now longer than what we had in the planning. It's because we've extended the duration. So with that, now, if I go and I change the table I'm currently viewing here, and I'm taking with you the variance table, you see that in the variance table here, if I take the task number 7, determine the scope, which is here, we have now start variance that is 0, but you noticed that all the other tasks have been postponed. And here, this explains that you see from task 9 to 12 in the start date here, as well as in the finish variance, we have 4 days. And if I'm coming here up to the finish variance, you see here that it's reporting that we have now 4 days variances. So this, you see it numerically, and here you see that change graphically into our diagram. If now I go into the reports and I'm going to take again the work overview, first of all, let's notice that here initiation is done, so it's actually completely done. You notice that we've changed the duration of the first task into the planning, but actually we didn't say whether we did something into that task. We just said it's going to last longer. So here you don't see any difference actually. Here up, nevertheless, it's interesting, the burn down chart of the work. You see that we have now a new line that has appeared. It's the remaining cumulative work, because we now have introduced 4 days more of work. So we see the appearance of that blue line. It doesn't mean that that blue line didn't exist before, but it was under the gray line, and now we see it coming out. So you see that just simple changes, they bring you changes of information, and whenever you do certain changes in MS Project and you are doing the tracking, go and understand what's happening. Because if you key in a lot of information. You key in a lot of completion for a lot of different tasks. And then after that, you go and give a look at the graphs. You will have really difficulties to explain what is happening into your graphs. So either you really know really well your project and you are able to do that, or you've brought a lot of changes and then it's really difficult to find the right explanation. So my advice is, like I'm doing now, do one change, go and look. Do one change, look at all the different reports to understand, to be sure that you understand your changes. So if I'm going now to take some other reports here. So let's look at the cost overview. Did anything happen in the cost overview? We see here that we have accomplished 7% into this project, and we see, if I take the column here, which is the variance, the planning column, in the planning line, the planning row, and I'm going and give a look at the cost variance, we see that we have a cost variance into this project. You see here down, we have 8,800 euros additional into this project. These are the 4 additional days we spent onto the project to determine the scope. Or it is better said, it's how we have planned to spend more time on this. And you see that the cost of the project has increased to what we had previously. I'm going to give a look into other reports here. And for example, if I take the cost overrun, you see that this report, we hadn't taken it before, but now you have here a graph that is telling you that during initiation, the value is 0. So how do you interpret this? It means that during the planning, you didn't have any cost variance. You didn't have anything that costed more. What about planning? You see that there is a top here going almost till 9,000, could be those 8,800. You are absolutely right. This is it. It's showing us here that something is going to cost us more into this project. Now, you see that we haven't moved down to anything further, but here we see that in this graph here is, do we have cost variance for resources work? And you see here, you can identify which of those resources have here brought those cost variance. And in fact, it means that the project manager is going to cost us more, and the consultant is also going to cost us more, because they are working together to define what we need to do into this project, and they are going to do this a bit longer. So below we have the table for where you see the cost variance for each resource. You have the PM and the consultant. So with this, it was a first approach in showing you that just simple changes that we've borrowed while we are doing the tracking already have influences on the reports, and that once again you should really be aware on those things. So I'm going into progress reports here, and I'm taking milestones just to have you understand that in a project you can have milestones. And here you have a report that shows, do I have some milestones that are past due? do I have coming milestones, and here, do I have completed milestones? This is to make you aware of important topics that you have in your project. You could have a decision milestone that is overdue or is next coming. So this helps you to understand the situation of the milestones into this project. Here you see that we accomplished one milestone. We decided to move ahead. The decision go, no go was favorable in going into this project. So with that, I have now had several reports, and now I'm advancing into the project itself here. Here we've defined the scope. So let's now admit that we are moving into the project and determine the scope. We can say that this was accomplished 100%. So with this, what do we see? We see, if I zoom in instead of zooming out, here we see that everything is in darker blue. If now, for example, I would have just said, and I'm going to take another table just to show you how we can do it with other tables. I'm taking here the tracking table, and we had said here that this was accomplished at 100%. If we would say that this is accomplished at 50%, you see that once again we would have had here just one part of the blue bar that has passed in darker blue, and we would have the baseline where it still remains a bit of this. So this is the basics of how you can do the tracking in MS Project, how you can follow what happens into a project. And I'm just going to change this to 100%. Like that, we have a situation. Oh no, I got mixed up. I was on the wrong line here. I wanted to come here and to move this to 100%. So this is done. So far, you saw how we can, with this, start to do the follow-up onto a project. In the next module, I'm going to continue with you the rest of the tracking of this project, that you can see how a complete project is going to be tracked. You are welcome to ask any questions during those sessions. I'm going to give answers to your questions. If you didn't have the opportunity to follow everything, of course, this will be online and you will be able to follow it on YouTube. So give also a look to the other videos. And anyway, anytime in the comments, you can ask questions. And for me, it's always a pleasure to give you answers. And sometimes it leads to other sessions where I bring you some other topics. So I'm Christian from Vision 6D. For me, it's a pleasure to exchange about that experience that I have in project management. Subscribe to the channel because this helps. And I'm looking forward to meet you for another video. Have a good time. See you soon. Bye-bye.